Rabbi Krohn, thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you for being with us. Rebbitzin Krohn, it's a true kavod, a true honor to welcome you back. It's also a testimony and a testament to the subject and the topic that we're going to cover tonight. One that influences and impacts, I would say not almost every, but every, not only Jewish home, but home. I want to thank my colleagues who are here tonight and their communities who co-sponsored tonight's event. The East Boca Kehila, Boca Jewish Center, Young Israel, and colleagues from elsewhere as well. Our partnership and our commitment to work on this together, please God, will yield payros, will yield an impact that can protect the sanctity of our homes and preserve the purity of our lives and that of our children. In this week's parsha, we'll read among the many, many mitzvos that are enumerated in the parsha that includes the most mitzvos of any in the Torah. When we'll build a new home, we have a mandate, we have an obligation to build a fence around our roof. And the rabbis expand this not just to the roof of a home, but a staircase needs a balcony and a pool needs a fence around it. In fact, the Gemara Baba Kama and Ksubos expand even further, and they say that this pasuk is telling us we have to protect and secure ourselves from any odious, insidious type of influence that could compromise or endanger our well-being. And therefore, the Gemara says you can't have a rabid dog or a dilapidated ladder. You can't have anything in which someone could get injured as a result. It's not just a nice idea to have this fence, literal and figurative. It's a mitzvah, so much so the Rambam and the Chayei Adam say you make a bracha before you actually fulfill this mitzvah of putting up the fence. And I would argue this evening that the edge within our homes that we run the risk of falling off of is not just literally the roof or the balcony, the staircase or the pool, but spiritually the edge of the cliff of our lives is our contact with technology that gives us so much blessing and so much opportunity, but also poses such a threat and such a danger. On this mitzvah of Makkah, Rav Soloveitchik says the Torah is reminding us of our vulnerability. Don't think you could have a roof with no fence, that you could walk and teeter on the edge and you'll be safe and secure and you have nothing to worry about. That's arrogance, that's hubris. To think you can engage the world and its danger and you'll be safe and secure is the antithesis of how we're supposed to feel. We should harness that vulnerability, which yields a sense of humility, and recognize that we need fences, we need boundaries, we need filters, we need safety, and we need security. And if we want to achieve another mitzvah in our parsha, Vayam Achanecha Kadosh, that for our camps to be holy, then this is an activity and an exercise that we need to engage. I want to thank Rabbi Meth not only for organizing tonight's wonderful event, but for the introduction of his amazing organization, Mokaid, in our community, whose very existence is to promote this safety, this security, to help us place those fences and those boundaries. He'll speak more about in a moment. We welcome this initiative, this effort. We're grateful to you, and we're here to partner with you, all of us, not just the rabbinic leaders, but the whole community, because it's something that we so badly need. So again, I want to thank Rabbi Krohn for being here. We look forward to being inspired by your words. Thank Rabbi Meth for putting this evening together. Please give your attention to Rabbi Meth.
Thank you, Rabbi Goldberg. I wanted to also echo what Rabbi Goldberg said. First of all, thank you to BRS for hosting such a marvelous event for us, and to the other local synagogues and rabbis, to Rabbi Gibber of Boca Jewish Center, whose idea it was that we should get somebody with the caliber of Rabbi Krohn to come down. That was Rabbi Gibber's idea. And to Rabbi Light of East Boca Kehila for his initial encouragement as to the importance of such a project. And to Rabbi Rabovsky of the Young Israel of Boca Raton for his continued support and insight and encouragement as to the importance of this special topic. I wanted to also wish a special mazel tov to Mr. and Mrs. Evan Young from Boynton Beach on the bar mitzvah of their son, Yehoshua. They're part of the reason that Rabbi Krohn was able to come as well. And a special thank you to Mrs. Lind and the Meth girls for helping to set up the refreshments that you'll partake of in a few minutes. One last special Hakaras Hatov to Ezra and Jessica Roth for sponsoring this event and taking a lead role in spearheading this new initiative. Before I introduce Rabbi Krohn, just a few brief moments to introduce Mokaid. What is this initiative? As Rabbi Goldberg mentioned, the idea of having a fence, of having a protection against internet and the issues that come with the internet. What do I mean by issues? I'm not going to speak very long about that. We know that there are issues. There are good issues. There are bad issues. I mean, I can go ahead and pay somebody back the $2 he lent me on Chase QuickPay. And I can go ahead and do a meal train if somebody needs assistance. We can have a community-wide, use our internet to sign up for chesed like that. I can even order on the go to the new kosher Dunkin' Donuts on my phone. It's just awesome, all the wonderful things we can do with technology. We can also live stream this event, except I think it's not working, but you know. But technology comes with issues also. What are the issues? Many of them. There's the content, which obviously could have some dangerous things, whether it's Lashon Hara or Onas Dvarim that goes on in certain chat rooms and social sites, or pornographic material that's available on sites. There's behavioral and social problems that occur with the internet, such as continued distraction. We find impulsivity and dependence on our devices. We find a disinhibition when we're online and we're commenting on various things that are out there. But perhaps one of the most important challenges that we face is our challenge to our Masorah. There's a Gemara that talks about the fact that the Torah was written down specifically as a Torah shebichsav. The Gemara in Menachos tells us you're not allowed to say Torah orally, really, and vice versa as well. The oral Torah, the Torah Shebal Peh, is not allowed to be written down, really. So how do we even have a Gemara? So we know that some 2,000 years ago, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi realized that if he wouldn't write down the oral Torah, the Torah Shebal Peh, it would be forgotten. It was an eis lasos lashem. And therefore, there was a special permissibility to change the modality of how the information of the Torah was transferred from Rebbe to Talmud. The Ran explains that the reason that Hashem wanted it to be that the Torah was only said orally, the Torah Shebal Peh, is because you cannot replicate the transference of the oral Torah from a Rebbe to Talmud, the nuance, the explanation that happens with an oral transmission of information cannot be repeated exactly by writing it down. And yet, because there was a tremendous need and the Torah was going to be forgotten, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi realized that he had to write down the Mishnah, and then subsequently the Gemara had to be written down. And you see from here that the way we communicate, the modality, it's so vital, it's so important. And I believe just in the past 30 years, the past 10 years, the past 5 years, we have an eis lasos lashem as well. The way we communicate with each other, the way we talk to each other, the way we express things to each other, it's changing, for good or for bad. It's there. So what's the job of Mokaid? 3 things. Number 1, to have events such as these to promote education and awareness of these issues. Number 2, to research what these issues are, because they're constantly changing. I guarantee you in 3 years from now, there are going to be a whole host of different issues. So to research what the issues are and what the products are out there that deal with the various issues and the pros and cons of each product. And finally, number 3, to assist each and every individual and family to come up with their own personalized internet safety plans. Because there's no one-size-fits-all magic solution to these issues. Every person, every family has their own challenges and their own needs and has to devise their own plan. So I'm asking you to go ahead and do something. We can help you at Mokaid to share with you some of the solutions that are out there. and we can come up together with a plan. We can help you implement these plans that we come up with, and we can help follow up on these plans. So I'm asking you, now that we're in the month of Elul, and it's time to do self-introspection and do an analysis on our everyday lives and what we're doing all the time, let's make it a focus in Elul to focus on this topic as well, and try to inspire ourselves to do something. Set up a meeting, you can go to our website, click schedule a meeting, and I'm happy, thanks to some sponsors who stepped up. It's a free service at this point. Please just go ahead and do something. Inspire yourself to do something this month of Elul. Speaking of inspiration, as Rabbi Goldberg mentioned, we have with us Rabbi Krohn, who is perhaps the greatest person to inspire us in these days and in our time. We go back, way back, when my wife and I first got married, just about almost 21 years ago. We had the zechus of living in Mrs. Krohn, Aleh Shalom, Rabbi Krohn's mother's attic. I always wanted to write a book, living in the Maggid's apartment. But we had occasion to see Rabbi Krohn back then, and Bobby Krohn, as we used to call her, was terrific, and it really enabled us to get to where we are now even. Rabbi Krohn was the Moel of our oldest son, who probably doesn't want me to tell you that, but he's not here, so it's okay. He's in yeshiva. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure, kavod, and honor to introduce Rabbi Krohn.
When Rabbi Meth called me, I asked him, how many people you think are going to come to a topic like this? He said, maybe 50. Oh boy, this is the biggest 50 I ever saw. This is amazing. It's just so incredible. I've been here many, many times, except for Shabbos. I don't ever remember a crowd like this. This is really absolutely incredible. I'm so humbled to be in the presence of Rabbi Goldberg. I was here, if you remember Rabbi Goldberg, when you were still the assistant Rav. Remember, we lived in that house. We came in Shabbos with that arch that you had in that house, if you remember. My wife, Zolzan Gesund, was the teacher of the Rebbitzin back in Shevach High School. And we've seen Rabbi Goldberg grow. I had the schus to be here with Rabbi Hershel Shechter Shlita on the 10th anniversary. It's just been so wonderful. And Rabbi Philip Moskowitz, the last time I was here, gave me a story that helped make me famous. I've been telling that story all around. And Rabbi Meth, I thank you. I don't know where Rabbi Yaakov Gibber is, if he's here tonight. Oh, there he is. I saw your son in there, Yisrael. He's so delicious. I was there yesterday for a bris. He's just like you. And I know that my mechatenist is here. I just saw my mechutin, Alex Kramer. Shane, I don't know where you are, but there you are. Okay. But it is just so great to be here, and we're going to have a great time, and we're going to learn about very, very important things, and I'm going to end with the greatest story you ever heard. But that's going to be in a while. There's a very famous pasuk in Amos Gimel pasuk Ches, and it tells us like this: Aryeh shog, if a lion roars, Mila Yira, wouldn't you be afraid? Imagine you're out in the street in Boca or any place, wherever it is, and there's a lion roaring. Everybody would be terrified. And Mefarshim say that Aryeh, Aleph Reish Yud Hey, stands for Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom HaKippurim, and Hashanah Rabbah. If you never heard that, it was worth coming just for that. Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom HaKippurim, Hashanah Rabbah. These days are roaring to us. Shouldn't we be afraid? So I remember a couple of years ago, my Rav, Zolzan Gesund, Rav Shlomo Tarabam, the night of Kol Nidre, he happened to mention this. Now, I had heard this, but I never heard the question that he asked on it. And he said, this past Rabbi Paysach, I went with my children to the Bronx Zoo, and we saw lions roaring, and the kids were laughing. They were not afraid. So what's the pasuk saying that when you see a lion and roaring, everybody's going to be afraid? And he said, of course, the answer is that the lion in the Bronx Zoo was in a cage. So if you put the lion in a cage, he could roar from today till tomorrow. Nobody's going to be afraid. But then he said something that was so stunning, I could not believe it. Listen to the final tefillah that we say Hoshana Rabbah. You won't believe it. If you never heard this, you would not believe it. We've said it every single year, but now all of a sudden it takes on a new meaning. Yehi Rotzain, we say at the end of Hoshana Rabbah, the final tefillah, V'tosir mechitzas habarzel hamafsekes beinenu beinecha. We ask Hashem, take away that cage. Take away that iron bar that's separating us from you. If you put Kaviyachal Hashem in a cage, you put Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, Hoshana Rabbah, that lion in a cage, you're not going to be afraid. So we don't want the bars in front of us. We want to be able to have a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's what we ask, to take away those bars. But I'll tell you something. I believe that as much as we want to be able to feel that lion, the presence of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, and Hoshana Rabbah, we as Jews should be very confident. Why? Because Bilam once said something about us. And it's interesting. He said, Hein Am, this is a nation, Kelavi Yakum. They can get up like a young lion. Uchariyis Naso, they can elevate themselves like a mature lion. It's true, Aryeh Shog. And we have to be afraid of that. But we should be confident that we have an answer. We can get back. We don't have to be so terrified of that lion that we don't have the answer. Hein Am Kelavi Yakum. We each have answers, whether it's through Torah and Tefillah and Chesed and Gedorim, as the Rav mentioned, we can answer back. But there's recently been a situation of social media and smartphones that there's no cage around it. There's no cage, and it confronts us every single day. And if it confronts us, that's something to be afraid of, because what answer do we have for that? So I want to tell you something that is so moving. It's just amazing. We all remember a few years ago when those three precious children, Naphtali, Gilad, and Ayal, in Eretz Yisrael, were kidnapped. And all of us were davening. Everybody was praying. Every Yid around the world was davening that those three boys should be found. For 2 weeks, no one knew where they were. How in the world could Israeli detectives not find where those three kids were? And everybody was praying, and finally, Rahman al-Islan, everybody found out that they had been killed. And I know someone who went to visit Naphtali's mother, to be Menachem Avel, Mrs. Frankel. She's a very articulate woman, and she said something at that Shiva house that is so amazing. You see what holy people are all about. And she said like this. She said, at the end, I had a partial nechama. I had a consolation. And everybody was wondering, what consolation could any mother have who lost such a delicious teenage child? And listen to what this holy woman said. She said, I know my son Naphtali. He loved doing mitzvahs. And the mitzvah that he loved to do most was the mitzvah of tefillin. And for the past 2 weeks, all I could think of, a great deal of what I thought about was, these terrorists, they will never let him put on tefillin. But then when I heard that he was killed the first day, I had a consolation, because at least my son Naphtali didn't have to go 1 day without wearing tefillin. Could you imagine a mother who just lost a child? That's what she's thinking. That her holy child didn't have to go 1 day without wearing tefillin. I could not get over that. The Kedusha, the Tahara, the concept of a holy woman speaking like that about her deceased son. I kept on telling this everywhere that I went. And a dear friend of mine, Rabbi Yaron Halbertal, who teaches in Yeshiva Darkei Torah, he called me up. He said, Rabbi Krohn, don't you realize something? I said, what is that? He said, Naphtali is the oisios tefillin. Nun, pei, tov, lamed, yud is Naphtali. Tov, pei, lamed, yud, nun is tefillin. That's why it was his mitzvah. A name has an influence. I went crazy about that. It's just amazing that was this child's mitzvah. I was so moved by that wherever I went, I told that over and I said, Rabbi Say, we've got to make a tikkun l'zecha nishmas these three tzaddikim. And especially men, when they're wearing tefillin, they have to try as much as possible not to talk when they're wearing tefillin. Now, it's very, very hard for a man to start doing that, not to talk. Bar mitzvah boys, if they undertake it when they're 13, that they won't talk, so then they get into it right in the beginning. But somebody that's been talking with their tefillin all their lives, it's very difficult. So I figured, but we've got to do something. What can we do when we're wearing tefillin to remember Naphtali? What tikkun can we make? And then 2 friends of mine and I, we were talking about it, and we came up with a slogan. And I brought a present for each of you tonight. Everybody will be able to go home with this sticker. You know what it says on this sticker? Put it in your sitter. Put it on your refrigerator. And on the sticker it says, disconnect to reconnect. And what it means is disconnect your phones to reconnect to Hashem, to your families, and to yourself. And that's what we came to talk about tonight. Most of us need the phones. We can't get along without them. But there comes a time when we have to realize that we have to disconnect to reconnect, because we have lost our senses when it comes to the smartphones. Many of you know that I am a moil. I want to tell you what happened in a shul. I can't say, of course, what shul it happened. There's a minig on the day of a bris that the moil comes forward after Vayvorach David, and he says, with the chazan, they say, responsively, V'chorei simei habris. So I walked from my place, I walk up to the bima where the chazan, where the Baal Tefillah is davening, and as I'm about to say V'chorei simei habris, I see he's got his phone. He's texting. He's the Baal Tefillah, and he's texting. It took all my self-control to say, who are you texting, God? He's the Baal Tefillah. And I want to tell some of the women here, if you would know how your husbands behave in shul with their text phones, you wouldn't even let them go to shul with the phone. There's some guys, Oyser Shalom B'm Roimov, they take out the phone. They got to see, did Staples send them an ad during Kedusha or during Shemoneh Esrei? We have lost our minds in our addictions to the phones. Not far from here, Rabbi Lehrfeld has a great sign in his shul. Right before you walk into the Beis Medrash, there's a big sign. Unless you're expecting a call from God, please shut your cell phones. It's a great sign. And I say that every single one of us, without fail, unless you're a doctor, unless you're on Hatzalah, or your wife's expecting any minute, shut the phones. We must learn to disconnect, to reconnect. Even if you have it on vibrate, you're still going to want to take a look and see what it's all about. Now I know that there are many people who daven on their cell phones because they have the davening there. So I remember one year I went to Italy together with Menachem Nissel. We led a whole group, and he was talking about the printed Svarim. That's where it started, in Italy. And he said, Baruch Hashem, so far, even those guys that daven on a cell phone, nobody kisses it at the end. Baruch Hashem. Hasn't reached that madrega yet where somebody will kiss the cell phone after all they know. If that happens, Rabbi Meth, we're in trouble. But the point is, how are we going to learn that? Now, do you know, I was doing a study. How often do you think people check their cell phones? Think about it for a second. Do you know that the average person checks their cell phones every 15 minutes? That's an addiction. And you know why? I learned a new word, FOMO. You know what FOMO means? Of course, if you're under 30, you know what FOMO means. Those under 50 have no idea. FOMO means fear of missing out. FOMO, F-O-M-O. And that's why people are constantly checking their cell phones. Do you know how many hours people spend on their cell phones? They took a study, people from 18 to 33. You know how many hours a day they spend on their cell phones, on smartphones? 5 hours a day. That's a third of the waking time that a person is awake during the day. If you make a cheshbon throughout the year, that's more than a month of time. It's almost 2 months of the 54 days. Can you imagine that? We've got to disconnect, not only to reconnect to Hashem, to reconnect to ourselves. We start talking to each other. Husbands, I'm telling you, you see on Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, when husbands and wives are walking, they're texting. Who are they texting? Each other? I know, everybody knows that there's some people in the same house that they're on the first floor, and the mother's on the third floor, the daughter's on the third floor. Instead of calling to her, they're going to text. Because they know there's more of a chance that the kid is going to respond to a text than the one when the mother's calling. So that's an addiction. We've lost ourselves. We have to disconnect to reconnect. There's a group of women in New York. They go out once a month. A group of friends. And one of them told me just an amazing thing. How do you split the bill? Do you split it evenly? No, this is how they do it. Great system. Everybody puts their cell phones in a bowl in the middle. And the first one to reach for their cell phone during the meal, they pay the cost for everybody. Not a bad idea, right? We've got to start that in Boca, right? So that's amazing. It just shows us how addicted, unfortunately, we have become. Now, I learned something that is so frightening. Now, I don't have Facebook, and I don't have Instagram, and I don't tweet. So you may ask, how could I get up and talk about that? Well, I'll tell you, folks, I never drank poison. And I can tell you, poison is no good. So I want to tell you, after reading how many divorces, Rahman al-Islam, I'm going to give you the statistics in a second, are caused because of people that are on Facebook. They're looking for new friends. They're looking for old friends. We know marriages have its ups and downs. And sometimes a person might be bored, or sometimes a person is lonely, so they're going to go on Facebook. So I want to tell you what Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter stand for the word fit, F-I-T. And you know what happens if you become fit with those three things? 3 Ds. Disappointment, disgrace, and divorce. And if you think I'm kidding, I want to show you something. You will not believe these terrible, terrible statistics. In England, the Divorced Online revealed social media has been implicated in 1/3 of all divorce filings. 80% of divorce attorneys have reported a rise in number of divorces linked to Facebook. Facebook is dangerous. I'm not talking Yiddishkeit. I'm talking your marriage. I'm talking your children. Do I have to tell you what the children go through when parents are divorced? Sometimes a divorce has to happen. It's true. But I'm involved in an organization you could cry. Sister to sister. In New York, 700 women divorced. In the metropolitan area. Out of those 700, there's over 3,500 kids. And 1/3 of them happened because of Facebook? You got to be crazy to be on Facebook. You're risking your lives. Your married lives. Is there anything worth it? So somebody told me the other night that because of Facebook, and somebody posted something on Facebook, their son lost the shidduch. So I said to the guy, are you on Facebook? He said, yeah. I said, how could you be on Facebook? Your son just lost the shidduch because somebody posted something that wasn't true. And everybody reads it and everybody believes it. You have to be big enough to stop with Facebook, to stop with Instagram, and to stop with tweeting. And people are going to say, well, we need it for business. You know something? People used to say that about Shabbos also. When they first came to America, we got to work on Shabbos. Otherwise, we're going to have no business. You know something? If you have that Mesiras Nefesh and you give up Facebook, Instagram, and tweeting, you'll see the Eibishter will repay you 10 times the amount. Because you're going to be a role model for your children, a role model for your grandchildren, a role model for your spouse. That's really what we have to do. So I want to tell you something. I could not get over this. I have a friend, a dear friend. I love him. But he was involved in politics. And unfortunately, he was involved in one of the parties. It's not important which one. And unfortunately, his boss was caught with certain fraudulent things, and his boss went to jail. But they posted on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram everybody who was in the office when this guy was jailed. Now, this guy, for the life of him, can't get a job. It's such a bitter Rahmanis. He's such a wonderful, honest fellow. But as was mentioned before by the Rav and by Rabbi Meth, when people post something, most people will believe it. Nobody's going to check into it. And this poor guy can't bring bread into the house. And he finds it very difficult. And it's all because something was posted. So I want to read you something that a woman wrote. I just want to tell you who she is, but it's so amazing. She's Dr. Lisa Stroman. She's the CEO of the Technology Wellness Center. Listen to what she writes. She's talking how people use a smartphone even to tell time. The truth is that many watch companies, their business is down. People aren't buying watches because they're telling time on the phone. And they're telling, they're looking for the weather. They're looking for everything on the phone. So she says one of the worst things that you can do is use your smartphone as an alarm clock. Because in the morning, as soon as you shut it off, what happens? You've got your finger on the pulse of the phone, right? So you're going to take a look. So I just want to read you what she writes. Don't check your phone the first thing in the morning. It's a common scenario. You're still in bed and you reach out and you grab your phone. You're immediately hit with 18 emails or news of a bombing somewhere that you never heard of. This gets your morning off to a stressful start, and that sets the tone for the rest of the day. As an alternative, listen to what she suggests. Spending those few minutes calmly thinking about something for which you are grateful. Moide ani lefonecha. You ever think about it that way? When I read this, I couldn't believe it. I have no idea if she's a Yid, but she's saying the first thing in the morning, try to think of something that you're grateful. Maybe tomorrow when we say Moide ani lefonecha, it's not only about our lives, that we're awake, that we have children, that we have grandchildren, that you have a spouse who you love most of the time, that you have a job, you have a shul. Look at this place. I asked somebody tonight, when is there a minyan for Ma'ariv? This is like going to Brooklyn. Every 20 minutes there's another minyan for Ma'ariv. I don't know if being like Brooklyn is the biggest, compliment, but whatever, that's what they said, right? In Brooklyn they say we're like Boca, right? But the point is, this is a woman who's talking that the internet or the emails or everything that you see in the morning is ruining your day. Why would you want to start the day that way? So instead you say, it's such an incredible thing. So I want to give you some advice. That's one of the main reasons we're here tonight. I want to give you some advice how to disconnect to reconnect. And I'm telling you, I did some of these things, and it makes a difference. You know what? One of the great suggestions is keep all your apps that you use most often on your front screen. All of us have so many apps. We have to go from many, many different screens. So, of course, if you're going on many different screens, you're going to pick up, and you're going to look at this app. You haven't seen this in a while. So waste so much time. But if you have all your apps, the main apps on your front screen, that's usually what you check for. That's a way of controlling it a little bit. Here's the second thing. I didn't realize this until I researched this. You always get these beeps, right? You get a whole day you're getting beeps and notifications. So make a note of this. You know how you can get rid of all these notifications? Go on settings, go to notifications, and every single app is mentioned there, and you could shut off the notifications. I told this to somebody. He told me within 10 minutes of when I told him, go to settings, go to notifications, and shut it off, this is what he shut off. CBS, NFL, Goodreads, At-Bat, TuneIn Radio, and CNN. Why do I have to know every little thing that goes on in Panama? Right? Or every time Trump, says something about immigration. Why do I have to get a beep with that every 5 seconds? Why do I have to know the starting pitcher of the Yankees at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? It's true. I hope the Yankees win. Especially they took your Miami guy. Right, Stanton? Not doing so great, but okay, fine. But okay, fine. So 11 o'clock at night, I'll turn on to see if the Yankees won. If him and Judge hit a home run. Yeah, I like to watch home runs. That's exciting. But I don't have to know that the second baseman got injured, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So you shut off at bat. Shut off all these notifications. You're going to get your life back. You recognize, something? You got kids at home. You probably didn't see them in 3 years. Why? Because you have no time. Because you're always reading the notifications. And I'll tell you another thing. I don't know how we all have so many apps. Take a look at which apps you haven't looked at in the last 3 weeks. And if you haven't looked at the app in the last 3 weeks, get rid of it. It'll minimize your phone. It'll minimize your time that you're going to spend on the phone. And you're not watching those apps anyway. Let's face it, you're not going to lose weight just because you look at the fitness file, a fitness app. It helps garnet, believe me, I can tell you. I got 6 of them. I shut off 5 of them the other night. Doesn't help. The only thing that's going to help if your wife doesn't stop nudging you. It's the only thing that's going to help. It's not the apps. But they're all there, and we all check them every once in a while. How to do the exercise, when to do the exercise, how many times you're going to do sit-ups, how many times you're going to do chin-ups. It's nice to watch, and then you go weiter. So your fingers got some exercise. You didn't get any exercise. Here's another thing. It's incredible. You take a look at Apple. There are many, many secular people, not Jewish people, that are going after Apple. How could you allow this to go on? You have to develop something that people shouldn't be addicted. So there's something called Moment. You can get an app called Moment. And this app, what it does is that it'll only allow you to be on your smartphone, let's say 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, it's going to shut the phone, even if you're in the middle of a phone conversation. Today, okay, Baruch Hashem, I have the opportunity to travel. You see people walking in airports. And you especially a woman, you can't see, that they got the, the little microphone or whatever. And they're walking, they're just like talking. I want to ask them, what's your mother's name? I want to daven for you. They're just talking. Who are they talking to? And sometimes, I got to tell you what happened on a plane once. Alex, you'll love this. My mechut and I always try to figure out who's traveling more over the world than each other. So there was one lady, sitting in row 2, right? And she was talking on her phone, and the plane hadn't left yet. And it was such narishkeit, but she was so loud. And then she gave the number, whoever was on the phone, that, if they wanted to reach her. So one guy in row 15 called her. And he said, get that dash phone quiet. She turned around and she was looking, I'm telling you. It was unbelievable. Who did that? Everybody was laughing their heads off. Because most of the time we're talking narishkeit. We just want to be connected. And that's really what it is. We feel that we must be connected, and we can be connected to each other. But this is such an easy way out. And we have to make sure that we don't do that. As a matter of fact, there's another thing also. A certain type of app that you can get that will, every, let's say, 20 minutes, it'll beep. So then you could check your email. Or then it'll go further. You can have an app that every 25 minutes it'll beep. So we're not so obsessed that every 5 seconds that we have, we're just looking at that phone. Because most of the time it is narishkeit. We know that. but it's just something to do. It's something to feel connected. So I want to tell you something that's, to me, absolutely amazing. I had the great zchus this week to be in Mexico City. Now, if you've never been to Mexico City and you don't know the Jews there, you cannot believe what kind of holy people they are. Now, I'll tell you why I went there. And it's a wonderful thing, Rabbi Goldberg. We have to start it all over the world. 6 years ago, 5 balabatim, business fellows, guys in their 20s and 30s, I doubt if they have a yeshiva background, they decided they're going to learn an Amud Yaimi. And they started with brachas, and then they went through the Mokaid Masechtas. In 6 years, this group of 5 grew to 200. And when I was there Monday night, there was a siyum of all the Masechtas and Masechta Mokaid, Shabbos, Psochim, Erevin, Megillah, Chagiga, Shkol. It's unbelievable. 200 guys making a siyum. Amud Yaimi. That was in Mexico City. Now, besides, if you're learning, obviously you're not going to be on your phone. But just the holiness of 200 young business people making a siyum after 6 years of learning. And then I went to a place called the Katz Chesed Community Center. Some young guy, Shlomo Tzerdok, put all the gemachs together. You have to see the chesed that goes on in Mexico City. It's unbelievable. But then they took me to some place I could not believe. There's a fellow, middle-aged man, his name is Rav Amram Amijar. Syrian fellow. And you could go online, even though that it's all Spanish, but I want you to go online because I want to give you a solution to a problem. What are one of the problems of children today? They want to be on the computers, right? They want to watch things because everybody's doing that. So this guy has a website. You have to see it to believe it. The word TU in Spanish means your. So it's Tu Torah Kids. TU TORAHKIDS. Go on it tonight. You will not believe. You know what they do in Mexico City? Every kid, every frum kid can get a tablet, can buy a tablet. They cost, let's say, $50. And every 3 months they get a SIM card with brand new material. There are fellas, I was in the office. You have to see, it's mamish like whole rum. You have guys sitting there they're making animation, and they have stories that they are creating. Heilige stories. I saw the Yetzer Hara and I saw the Yetzer Tov. You know, they have them animated somehow. And then they have stories for the kids. Imagine you're on a plane, you're going back in time, you're going to meet Shlomo Melech. And Rabbonim are checking out this material. These kids can watch it for hours. Godless Habayre. They have about the animals. They have stories. They have chesed stories. And that's a solution, because here the kids, and on the tablet you can't get the internet, you can't get anything except the material, but there's so much material. And of course he has to raise, $40,000 a month for it, but he does it. And if we could do that in America, we can get people that are so creative. My son-in-law and I, Hananya Kramer, tonight, go on it. You'll see. Living Lessons, and put my name. Or Living Lessons Koram. You will not believe what it is. What we did is I told 5 stories, let's say, about the Yom Noraim. Then another one I did 5 stories about Pesach. Another one Shabbos. Another one Hanukkah. We did Chesed. In 2 weeks is coming out Hashgacha Pratis. And there's stories that the kids could watch. But now you watch it on a regular computer, but you have access to the internet. But on that tablet, these kids are getting fabulous, kosher, heilige material, no end, and every 3 months they're getting new material. It's not going to save everybody, but it's going to save a lot of kids. And it's going to teach many children wonderful, wonderful things. And we have to learn from everyone. Go online, contact this man. He speaks Hebrew and he speaks Spanish. And this is something we have to do in America. We could save so many children because they want a tablet, and like this, they're able to do something that makes sense and something that's time-consuming. In Perek Lamed Dalet, LeDavid B'Shanoisei, David HaMelech writes a number of psukim. And there's one pasuk there that he writes, L'chu vonim shimuli yiras Hashem alamedcha. And the Chofetz Chaim asks a wonderful kasha. He said, imagine if David, let's say I want to tell you something. Wouldn't I say, Bo banim, come, my children? Why you say L'chu banim, go, my children, Shimuli? What do you mean, go? If you're going, you're not going to listen to me, you're out of here. But the Chofetz Chaim says a fabulous teretz. He says, you know what David HaMelech wanted? David HaMelech didn't want anybody to be a hermit. David HaMelech didn't want you to be just right here. Go, my child, go out to the world. But listen to me. Remember, Yiras Hashem alamedchem. You got to be part of the world. The Chassam Sofer writes on the Pasuk Kedoshim Tiyu, if a person stays in his own Dalet Ames, the Talmud Chacham, and he can't deal with people, that's the biggest Chilul Hashem. People say just because the guy knows how to learn, he doesn't know how to talk to people. You have to go out. And you know something? Now that you know this, so you'll take a look every year when we go to Poland. They always point this out. Take a look on the Lublini Yeshiva. Rabbi Meir Shapiro, that's the pasuk. L'chu vanim shimali. You know why? Because that's what he wanted. He didn't want the boys to stay in Lublin forever. He wanted to learn in the Beis Medrash and go out, face the world. And then David HaMelech tells us another pasuk. Mi Yesh HaChofetz Chaim, who is the one who wants life. That's why we came here in Elul. We're all going to say Zochreinu L'Chaim. Melachofetz b'chaim, because Veinu b'sefer ha'chaim. Why lemancha Elokim chaim? It's not that we just want to live long for the sake of living long. We want to do something, Hashem. We want to be your people. We want to be your representatives in this world. Lemancha Elokim chaim. And then what does he say? Netzor l'shoincha meira usvasecha medaber mirma. I was telling Evan Young, that's the person that I'm staying by. And the Rays, I thank them for hosting us, but Evan and his wife are making a bar mitzvah. I said, if the Chofetz Chaim would be here today, what would he say about the internet? He would, it would be terrible. You can kill a person's reputation in 20 seconds around the world. And I'm telling you, I know people other people who are out to get them posted terrible things. And I said to him, can't you sue him? He said, it's not easy, you can't. It's a free country. So he was going to hire somebody who has access to Google somehow, that at least when they put your name, that's not the first thing that's going to be there. But it costs a fortune. And they want the money in advance. But somebody could kill someone's reputation. But then the next pasuk is what I want to talk about. Sur meira v'yasei toif. Yidden cannot come together in Elul and just talk about sur meira. We have to learn tonight about asei toif. And we've spent the last half hour talking about sur meira. Not to become addicted, not to have certain of that social media, to understand how we have to control it. That's all sur meira. And it's wonderful. And it's interesting because that's first, right? Sur meira v'yasei toif. But what's the asei toif? How are we going to change? What are we going to do that's good? You can't only live on not doing things. That's why so many people who don't understand the beauty of Shabbos, they get turned off. I can't do this, I can't do that. So there's an element to sur meira, of course. But what's the asei toif? So I want to tell you an amazing thing. When we go to Poland, I always tell people, we go the first day, we go to the kever of the Sfas Emes. And the Sfas Emes lived to be only 58 years old. And at his levaya, two of his sons were speaking, and one of them said, at least our father had Arichas Yomim. He said, Arichas Yomim? Longevity? Only lived to be 58. What are you talking about? Listen to the answer. The Imri Emes said, I didn't say he had Arichas Yonim. I said he had Arichas Yomim. No one can guarantee for you Arichas Yonim. No doctor, no Rav, nobody. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. But every single one of us can have Arichas Yomim. And that's what he said about his father. His father every day counted. That's what we have to learn tonight. Not only what not to do, but how do we do it? How do we live that type of life that we have in our lives? Arichas Yomim. Every day should count. So I want to tell you something remarkable. My Mechatena says related to Esther Youngreis. All of us knew Rebbe said Esther Youngreis, one of the greatest women in our generation. And I had the schus to get to know her very well because we had the opportunity to speak on many programs together. And she once told me, I remember her husband, Rabbi Shulam Alav Shalom, he died many, many years ago. And they had a very wonderful marriage. And she was so broken when he died. And she said to me, I couldn't even look at his Svarim because in his Chumashim or Tanakh he always wrote notes and he had a very distinct handwriting. She said every time I saw the handwriting, it just brought it back to me alive. And I couldn't look at it. And one night, her daughter found an index card that Rabbi Shalom Youngreis had written. Listen to what it said on that index card. What a lesson for Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, and Hoshana Rabbah. This is what Rabbi Shalom Youngreis wrote, and the Rebbetzin said once she read that, she knew that was his message to her how to go on with life. A long life is not good enough, but a good life is long enough. Listen to that. A long life is not good enough, but a good life is long enough. And when I heard that, it was so special to me because my father died when he was only 47. Now, when you're 21 and your father's 47 and he dies, you think 47 is an old man. But everybody here can tell you 47 is very young. So a long life is not good enough, but a good life is long enough. And then the Rebbetzin wrote a book called Life is a Test, and she writes, the goodness cannot be measured by the length of our years, but how we live those years. The goodness is not about what we amass, but what we give. It's not about having more, but being more. For in the end, our lives are judged not by the businesses or the houses or the portfolios we build, but by the lives we touched and made better. And that's how you have Arichas Yomim. Thinking about others, not about ourselves. Every one of us, and I know so many of you here, have such wonderful talents. And you could do so much for the people in your community, for Klal Yisrael. But many of us have low self-esteem because we listen to what our mother-in-law said about us. Or you listen to what your sister-in-law says about you. Don't listen. Every one of us is special. Every one of us can be so great. And I want to tell you a fabulous story that happened just a few weeks ago. I get a call from a young couple in Long Branch, New Jersey. And they're both, a young couple, they're both nervous. And they said, Rabbi Krohn, please give us chizuk. Please, we're so frightened. I said, what is the problem? She said, I'm in my 9th month and I'm about to have a baby in 3 weeks. I said, why should you be frightened? That's one of the most glorious moments in a woman's life, that she has a child. And she starts crying and she can't talk. And her husband continues. And he says, last year she was also pregnant. And she was in the 9th month. And then we went to the hospital Friday night. It was at the end of the pregnancy. And the baby was stillborn. The baby wasn't alive. And we're so terrified that the same thing could happen. Please, give us a skula. We're so frightened. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only one that they called. So I said, I want to tell you what to do. I want you to take out your Tillim right now. And I want you to look at 2 parakim, Kuf Chav Zayin and Kuf Chav Ches, 127 and 128. And I said, let's read the pasuk together. Kechitzim biyad gibor, Cain b'nei hanaurim. Just like arrows in the hand of a strong man. A man can stand here and shoot an arrow very far, and the arrow could accomplish what it's supposed to accomplish. Same thing with children. A person who raises wonderful children, they could be here, but they could go far away and they could accomplish. And the next parak in Kuf Chav Ches tells us, Eshtecho kegefen poiriya. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine. Bonecho, your children will be keshisile zeisim, like olives. Olives are always in season, fresh and vibrant. I said, listen to me. I want you to do this. Don't tell anybody I'm telling you this, but it's just between me and you. I want you both every day to say both Kuf Chav Zayin and Kuf Chav Ches, and Mitzvah Hashem, you'll see. Everything's going to be fine. Fine. I said, do me a favor, don't forget to call me. Okay. 4 weeks later, the guy's on the phone. He says, Rabbi Krohn, do you remember who I am? I said, yeah, of course. What happened? He says, Baruch Hashem. Well, the second he said Baruch Hashem, I knew it was good. And he says, Baruch Hashem, we had a girl. And I'm a moil. I said to him, you couldn't have had a boy? No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But the point is, okay, fine. He was so happy. I asked him the girl's name, gave a bracha. He says, Rabbi Krohn, I want to tell you part of the story that I didn't tell you last time. He said, you know, where we have the hospital in Long Branch, New Jersey, not far away is the shul where I daven sometimes. And that morning I was so devastated. I said to my wife, Shabbos morning, I got to go to shul. I got to daven in shul. But by the time I got there, it was Kriyas HaTorah. And the first person that was getting an aliyah when I was there was the famous singer Yaakov Chwecki. And he had just had a little girl a few weeks ago, and that Shabbos, they were making a very big kiddush. And of course, everybody's happy for me. Such a lovely guy. He says, you imagine how difficult it was for me. I just come from the hospital, such a terrible tragedy. This was going to be our first child. I walk into shul. Who's the first guy who gets an aliyah? A guy who had a healthy baby. It took all my strength to go over to him and to tell him Mazel Tov by the Kiddush. And then when I said to him, Mazel Tov, I said, Yaakov, do you mind if I ask you something? I want to ask you something after the Kiddush, if we could just talk privately for a minute. And he said, yeah, of course. After the Kiddush, I went over to him. I said, Yaakov, you know me, I daven here. You've seen me here many times. My wife asked me to ask you a favor. Could we come to your house tonight, straight from the hospital, and you'll sing for us the song, Mama Rachel, Cry. We have to cry. We have to get it out of our system. We're so sad, we're so broken. And nobody can sing that song like you. And he said, what's the question? Of course you should come. No matter how late you come, I'm going to be waiting for you. Now, listen to the words. I'm not going to sing the song, but listen to these words. Mama Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? If you raise your sweet voice now, as then, the day will come. He said, Rabbi Krohn, I want you to know, not only did he sing that for us, he sang other songs like Rachem, which means Hashem should have compassion. He gave us CDs. He made us feel so special. He gave us chizuk. I said, I can't get over that. It's amazing. I got to use that story. But you can't use a story about somebody unless you get permission. Now, 3 times a week, anybody who comes over to me, I'll give it to you. You could get this email that I do 3 times a week about the importance of doing a chesed a day. Obviously, no charge. I'm happy to send it out. So I said, I gotta put this on the chesed recording, but I got to ask him. I call Yaakov. I have his cell phone. He calls me back. I said, I got to use this story. It's such a tzidkis of what you did. I mean, the guy gets thousands of dollars for a concert. And here he's singing for this couple, obviously gratis. So he says, Rabbi Krohn, I just want to show you, first of all, what a tzaddik is. He says, Rabbi Krohn, I just want to tell you, I'm afraid that you should tell the story. I said, what are you afraid of? He said, you know why I do these things? I do these things so that, when I come to the Olam HaEmes, Hashem's going to give me reward. I'm afraid if you tell everybody the story, I'm going to get less reward. I don't want to get less reward in the Olam HaEmes. I said, Yaakov, you're a bigger tzaddik than I thought you were. I said, but let me tell you, why do you do what you do? Because guys that are older than you have been doing it for years. Mordechai ben David, Avram Fried, Shlomi Dax. And you learned from them. If you let me tell the story, people are going to learn to take their talents and give it to other people like you did. He said, okay, you could tell the story. And I told him, that's going to be your reward. And that's what we have to learn tonight. You know how you have Arichas Yomim? Thinking of the talent that you have and seeing what you can do in Boca, what you can do in Boynton Beach, what you can do in North Miami. What could you do for the community? We all have talents. I want to tell you a story. It's just unbelievable. And I can't get over the story. This has to do with somebody that many of you may have heard of. His name was Mike Tress. He was the head of Agudas Yisrael. Now, he was my uncle. My mother and his wife were first cousins. I never called him Mike. I called him Uncle Elimelech. I can't say that I knew him well because he died when I was 21, 22. But recently it was his 51st yahrzeit. So people asked from the newspapers, the Jewish newspapers, maybe they asked the sons, maybe you could tell us a story about your father that nobody knows. So my cousin Tzvi told this story. He was in Miami, and he was davening in a shul, and he had his talis bag on the table, and some Satmar guy with beard and payas comes over to him and says, oh, Tress, that's your name? He says, yeah. He says, "Dies gekent Mike Tress? You knew Mike Tress?" He said, what do you mean? That was my father. And this Satmar guy, mamish, starts crying. Tears are coming down his cheeks. And my cousin Tzvi says to him, you knew my father? He said, I want to tell you a story that happened many, many years ago. He said, I was a young man. I came to Satmar. I was a Satmar chassid. I had a job for 1 week, and they threw me out because I was Shomer Shabbos. I came to Satmar. I begged the guys, please, get me a job. I don't have food for me and my wife and my child. But Satmar wasn't what it is today. They weren't so organized. Everybody was struggling themselves. And nobody could give me a job. Finally, some guy said to me, why don't you go down to the Aguda office? It's a couple blocks away. There's a guy there, Mike Tress, and he likes to help people. So this Satmar Chassid says to my cousin, listen what he says. He says, I'm Satmar. You think I'm going to the Aguda? I'm going to go to a guy named Mike who doesn't have a beard? So for 2 weeks, he said, I starved. And then afterwards, I just couldn't take it. I had to go. So I come there, and he puts out his hand. He says, Shalom Aleichem, how can I help you? I said, listen, I got to have a job. I don't have food on the table. He said, what do you do? He said, I'm a glazier. So your father says to me, a glazier? That's great. There's a glazier 3 blocks from here, and I know that he needs somebody. Here, let me give you a note. Go to him. He'll hire you on the spot. I'm telling you, I know he needs somebody. He said, sure enough, I went to the guy. The guy hired me on the spot. And the next couple of weeks, every Thursday, I got paid. I could not believe it. I felt like a human being. I had food on the table. I had a job. After 2 months, my boss calls me in one morning, and he says, I want you to go to Mike Tress. Tell him he doesn't have to give me any more money. From now, I'm going to pay you direct. Could you go crazy from that? That's what he wrote on the note. Take this guy, I'll pay you. Just pay him. Put him on your payroll. That's chesed. That's not thinking about yourself, thinking about other people. That's really what it's all about. Tell you another story that I heard recently. It's unbelievable. Many of you know I go to these places. So last week or 2 weeks ago, we were in Lithuania, and from there we went to Latvia and Riga. I'm telling you, you must learn what happened to Jews in Riga. Most people don't know. Everybody knows about Babi Yar. If you would know, Rahman al-Itzlan, how many Yidden were killed in Riga, in the ghettos there, 24,000 Yidden, and there was a Goyish fellow, Janis Lipke, who saved so many Jews. He was like Raoul Wallenberg. But most people don't know about it. But over there, we had one fellow who came from Eretz Yisrael. He was helping us with the food. He told a story about his father. You just can't believe it. His father's name is Rabbi Solomon. He comes to New York in the 5 towns twice a year. And the holy women of the 5 towns, they put together so much clothes so that it could be sent by a container to Eretz Yisrael. And they make sure that the clothes is tzniusdik, that it's not shabby, and that it looks good. And then there are women in Eretz Yisrael who get the clothes. It's a place called Chazdei Shlomo. And people know to call them. And they call them, and somebody who's got 3 or 4 kids gets this kind of box, 5 kids, 6 kids gets a different kind of box. So 2 years ago, there was a lady who was so poor, she couldn't even pay the rent. And she calls Chazdei Shlomo. She said, I have 4 children, and I need clothes. I'm just so desperate. I have nothing. And they said, okay, fine. We're going to, on Rehov Shmuel Hanovi, we're going to put out the boxes. We never put a name. Nobody should be embarrassed. Your box will be 23. She comes. She takes box 23. She opens it up in the house. Couldn't get over it. Beautiful clothes for the kids. And then on the bottom, she sees a dress. It's a lady's dress. And that night she had to go to Sheva Bracha. She didn't have any nice clothes. But this looked like it might fit her. She put it on, and it fit perfect. She couldn't believe it. She's about to leave her house that evening. All of a sudden, she feels like a pin opened up, and it's sticking her in her side. She takes a look. She says, it is a pin. And to the pin is connected an envelope. And in the envelope is a letter. And the letter says like this: to whom it may concern, if you are wearing this dress, it's obvious you need money. Please take the money in this envelope and use it any way you want. In the envelope was $950, the exact amount she needed for the rent. Could you go crazy? That lady in the 5,000 will never know who this is. Could there be a bigger matan b'seisa than that? But Hashem blessed her with money, so what does she do? She gives it to others in such a beautiful, holy way. That's how we have Arichas Yomim. And I'm telling you, you could all do great things. You have to believe in yourself. There are 3 things you have to believe in. You have to believe in Hashem, you have to believe in Torah, and you have to believe in yourself. I always tell the story in the 9th grade. My mother came to PTA. We had a wonderful teacher. We loved him. He was our favorite teacher. He taught us English. The guy's name was Hyman Ozer. He says to my mother, Mrs. Krohn, your son is a good writer, but he's never going to write a book. So my mother was like so surprised, like, where did that come out of left field? So in the 9th grade, she wasn't expecting me to write books. So she says, Mr. Ozer, why do you say he'll never write a book? Nah, he's too religious. Nobody's going to read what he writes. So I guarantee you, by the time the next parent came in, Mr. Ozer surely forgot what he said. But my mother didn't forget. She came home and told me, and I surely didn't forget. And 25 years later, when the Mokaid Speaks came out, I went looking for Mr. Rosa. You know, is the guy still living? And sure enough, he was in Hafta. He was the head of the English department in Hafta. I called him up. I said, Mr. Oza, remember you taught in Tervadas? He said, yeah, I had some good years there. I said, you know, I don't know if you're going to remember me, but I was one of your students, Paysach Krohn. He said, yeah, I think I remember. I said, you know, I got a gift for you. When can I bring it? He said, oh, you got a gift for me? You could come tomorrow. I come there. He's sitting behind his big desk in Hafta, you know, in Woodmere, or in Lawrence, rather. And I said, Mr. Oza, I'm sure you can't remember this, but you told my mother in the 9th grade that I would never write a book. And I just wrote a book about Jewish short stories, and I want to give it to you, and I'd like to autograph it for you. Well, the guy went crazy. He comes out of the desk, he puts his arm around me, he says, come with me. He takes me into one of his classes, and he says, boys, I want to show you a former student of mine. He just wrote a book, and I taught him how to write. Let him think you taught. Now, what if I would have believed him? I can't write a book. My favorite teacher said I can't write a book. Yesterday, Baruch Hashem, my 13th book came out. Yesterday. Should all get 6 copies of it. Motivated by the Mokaid. Rabbi Goldberg, I have one for you. Don't worry. And Alex, you too. Don't worry. You guys don't have to worry. Yaakov, don't father. But, so you can't believe what anybody says about you. You know my favorite word, one of my favorite is ever. It's something that Rav Hutner said. Vayar Elikim eskol asher osa v'hinei tov mo'id. Hashem, so at the end of creation, he did, and it was wonderful. So the Medrash says something so puzzling. Mo'id is Adam. Mem Aleph Daled is Aleph Daled Mem. So for that you need a Medrash. Any kid in grade 5 will know that you mix around the letters. Mem Aleph Daled. You can make Aleph Daled Mem. Rav Hutner said a fabulous thing. He said everything in life can be measured. The distance from here to the sun can be measured. The distance from here to the bottom of the ocean can be measured. The only thing that can't be measured is the potential in man. A man is Mokaid. You can do anything. You think Rabbi Meth thought 20 years ago, when he was living upstairs by my mother, that one day he's going to turn over the whole world with the internet? One guy had an idea of Mokaid. And now thousands of people, because this is going to be in living on TorahAnytime.com. And within 3 days, this is going to be all over the world. That there's a young man here in Boca, together with the wonderful Rabbanim, they're going to change people's attitude about Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And they're going to know that it's dangerous. And they're going to get rid of it. And they're going to get those apps that are going to control ourselves. And we're going to take all our apps and put them on the front page so we don't have to look at everything else. I'm going to make sure we don't use it as an alarm clock. But in the morning, we're going to say, Moidani. I'm going to make sure that we have those apps that measure how much time we spend on the internet, and it's going to shut it off for us, on the phones rather. We have tonight Sur Mirah, but don't forget the Asay Toiv. Because that's what Yidden are all about. And I want to tell you one more thing, and then we'll end with this fabulous story. When Rav Matisyahu Solomon had to speak on this topic, he said something tremendous. He said, the Pasuk tells us, Kedoshim Tiyu. Now, he has an interesting kasha. I never thought about it. It should have said, Kedoshim Yiyu. You should become Kedoshim. Tiyu means you will be. But the command really is Kedoshim Yiyu. You should become Kadosh. But you know what the answer is? Because we're going to make it. Kedoshim Tiyu. You'll be Kadosh. God has trust in us. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu said to us before he passed away, V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha. You guys are going to return. It's going to take time, but the Baal Tshuva movement will come. And you'll see. And V'shavta, the Slonim Rebbe says, has the Oisei Shabbos. More people observing Shabbos today than ever before. More people Bali Tshuva than ever before. And more people are going to control social media than ever before because of Mokaid. And because of what we are doing here tonight. Kedoshim Tiyu. We're going to get there. We're going to be Kalavi Yakum. We're going to answer that Aryeh Shog. That's the reason of getting together tonight. And that's the reason there's a tremendous crowd. You know why? Because we all know deep in our hearts that we're addicted. And we all know that we have to change. And we all know that we're going to change. That's the beauty of tonight. Kedoshim Tiyu. We will be holy. Kalavi Yakum. Ka'ariyas Nasa. We should be confident about Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, and Hoshana Rabbah. So just to put you in a fabulous mood, I'm going to tell you this great story. Last year, my wife and I were in Monsey for Shabbos. And Monsey Shabbos, I had to go 80 miles from Monsey to Lakewood because I was speaking for some yeshiva. They had a Malav Malka dinner. Now, some of you from New York, you know the highway system. You got to get on the Palisades, you get on the thruway to the Turnpike, Garden State, Route 9, and you're in Lakewood. Now, we're getting on the Palisades. We're on the ramp. All of a sudden, a car in front of us, the hatch opens up. Out comes a crib. Out comes a suit box. Out comes a suitcase, a hat box, everything that a Yiddish family needs. And my wife is blowing the horn, but they don't know anything. They're just flying. And, you know, you couldn't even drive. Thank goodness it wasn't on the highway. It was just on the ramp. So me and my grandson, we went out. We took everything. And, you know, we put it in the car, trying to figure out maybe there's some identity. That night, I learned a very important lesson. You know what the lesson is? If you're traveling, never put your home phone on your suitcase. You're not home. What good is it if they call you home? You're not home. Put your cell phone. But they didn't learn that lesson. So I called their home, and this is the message that I left. Hello, this is Rabbi Paysach Krohn. Please do not disrupt your shalom bayis. Don't blame each other who left the hatch open. Because I saw everything come out, and we have everything. So you have nothing to worry about. You're not going to lose a thing. Just get back to me, and we'll get it to you somehow. We saw that they lived in Brooklyn. 3 hours go by, nothing. We don't hear from them. I couldn't believe it. Okay, fine. Coming back after midnight already from the speech, on the Verrazano, getting to Brooklyn to get to Queens. All of a sudden, I get a call. Rabbi Krohn, a lady screaming on the phone. I can't believe you got our stuff. I said, where you been for the last 3 hours? She said, no, our cell phone was dead. We didn't think that we had any messages on the home phone, but we got back after midnight. We just listened to the message, and we can't believe you got all the stuff. She said, I'm telling you, we were going crazy because we went back. We realized what happened. We went to Chaverim. Chaverim couldn't find anything. We thought everything was stolen. We went to the police. We made a police report. And we can't believe that you have everything. I said, and my wife is so smart. She said, hey, listen, we got to go through Brooklyn to get to Queens. We'll be there in 10 minutes. We come there, and they're so happy. They were mamish waving 1 o'clock in the morning. They were in the streets, you know, flagging us down as if, you know, we're going to miss them. And then she says, Rabbi Krohn, I want to tell you what happened. See, tonight was my sister's son's bar mitzvah. And everybody was so happy except me. I was sitting in the corner. I was so miserable. And my sister comes over to me and she says, how could you be so miserable? It's a family simcha. Why aren't you happy? She said, I should be happy. I lost my suitcase. It's got my jewelry. I lost my dresses. My husband lost the suit. We lost the kid's crib. Lost the hat box. And my sister says to me, boy, if you get all your stuff back, that's a Paysach Krohn story. She comes home, and guess who's on the phone, right? But I want to tell you what she told me afterwards, and we'll close with this. She said, I want to tell you how I davened. She said, I went into a corner, and I said to Hashem, Hashem, you know I never keep anything in my house that's not mine. If I owe a quarter, I return it. And last week, I got a delivery from the grocery store, and I take a look on the bill. Everything was paid for, but they didn't charge me for the delivery, so I went back. Because I never want to keep anything that's not mine. So Hashem, you know that I never keep anything that's not mine. Please make sure that tonight I get back everything that is mine. She said 20 minutes later, I got home, and you're on the phone, and you have all my stuff. And that's what I want to tell you. Tefillah works. It's not going to be easy to do all the things that we spoke about tonight. To give up all the fitness of Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and to do all those things. But we have to daven. We have to daven. We're in a great community. We daven for each other. We should give chizuk to each other. We have to change. We have to grow. It's true. Aryeh Shog, Mila Yira. Hashem's not in the cage. Elul's not in the cage. But Kalavi Yakum, Kariyas Naso, we got the answer. We have to thank Rabbi Meth and Mokaid. We have to thank the wonderful Rabbanim of Boca and the whole area that we're in this together and we're going to make it. David should bench all of us. We should have a gezunta year, a gebench year, only simchas and nachas, and next year in Yerushalayim. Thanks for inviting me and thank you for listening.